Hello! This is a gaming show where we keep you up to date with the latest Nintendo-related gaming news. On today's show, today I just need to have a little rant. Because, oh my god. Since the Switch 2 launch, I have been a devoted Nintendo fan, waving the flag of support for Nintendo. It's backfiring. It's backfired. When Nintendo first announced the price of the Switch 2 console, many people said it was too expensive. Now, I still maintain that £395 is an absolute bargain price for a next generation handheld. And the reason why I say that is because the Switch OLED in the UK it's £300 anyway. Add on an extra £95, get the new upgrade, you've got access to a whole new generation of games in the palm of your hands. It's a no-brainer. When Nintendo announced that the price of their new Mario Kart World game was $74.99/$80, I said, okay, Nintendo, take my money. Here it is. Here's my PIN number. And I kind of justified that $74.99. It's open world Mario, it's next generation power that we're playing with, better graphics, better gameplay experiences, new things that Nintendo were giving us stuff. But yeah, okay, do you know what I mean? Plus ray tracing and volumetric lighting and fog costs a lot. It does.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
But then Nintendo announced something called game card keys. Now, I've spoken about these on the channel before, but let's have a little refresh if you don't know what they are. When Nintendo announced game key cards, I was like, okay, Nintendo, I see you, I see what you're doing. In the previous generation, when you wanted to buy a gargantuan game that couldn't fit on a Nintendo Switch cartridge, if I wanted to buy, I don't know, Return to Wolfenstein, or if I wanted to buy Doom Eternal, even if I wanted to buy the physical version, when I opened the box of the physical game, I would be greeted with a download code. Previously, on the Switch 1, digital games were locked into your system. So Nintendo have introduced game card keys to kind of remedy this situation. Now with game key cards, now when I buy a Nintendo Switch 2 game, when the gigage is 2 gig, when there's too much gigabytes to fit on the cart, Nintendo can put it on a game key card. Now with game key cards, I can take this cartridge out of my Switch and I can give it to my friend. I can give it to my next door neighbour. When I'm finished with this game, I can go on eBay and sell the game. I can get resale value from it. Fantastic, Nintendo. You're making light out of a bad situation. And so what I worry about is that publishers, they're going to start charging for these access keys. I know they are. Watch, fast forward 1 year. Every single time you put a game key cartridge in another Switch, I bet you any money some pop-up box comes up and you've got to type in your credit card details to gain access to the key. I already know that video game publishers hate the second-hand video game market. Do you know what I mean? What video game publisher would want their video game floating around in the second-hand market, constantly getting money, and they're not getting a piece of the pie? I'm scared.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
So there are pros and cons to game card keys. So I see what Nintendo were doing. You've introduced 3 new options into the Switch 2 ecosystem. Standard video game cartridge, everything's on the box. You pull it in your Switch, the game works. Digital only games, tied to the system, it's stuck on your console, you can't resell it, you can't get rid of it. Game card keys, you give me a cartridge that I can resell, but the game's still digital and I've still got to download it. Okay, cool. Use this option for games that can't fit on the cartridge. I've got to think how much gigabytes Call of Duty will take up. I know it's going to be a lot. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be a lot. So yeah, Call of Duty probably, when it comes to Nintendo Switch, will have to come on a game cartridge key. And that's what I thought publishers were going to do. I thought they were going to use game card keys when the game could absolutely not fit on the cartridge. But when I seen Square Enix put Bravely Default on a game key card, which is a Nintendo 3DS game, by the way, I knew that something was going to go wrong. I knew it. This game can only be about 10 gigabytes maximum. This is now a digital download game. Just put it on a normal cartridge. It doesn't need to be a game key card. Almost every single video game developer is putting their games on the Switch 2 on a game card key. Game key card, whatever they're called. Meanwhile, you've got the developers of Cyberpunk 2077 managing to squeeze that whole game on the cartridge. And Cyberpunk 2077 looks absolutely incredible. We got the ray tracing on there. Oh my god, we got the ray tracing on Cyberpunk. Do you know what I mean? If CD Projekt Red are getting ray tracing and Cyberpunk on a 64GB cartridge, then you should be able to get Street Fighter on a 64GB cartridge. Any of the Switch launch games, when I seen that they were all coming on game card keys, it made no sense. The point that I'm making is that not everything has to be a game key card.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
This brings me on to my actual issue. So on the Nintendo Switch 1, game cartridges came in a variety of different sizes. I can't remember the specific gigabytes, but Switch games I think went all the way up to 64 gigabytes. Maybe not, I don't know. It could be 32. But the point that I'm making is that video game developers had options. They could pick different cartridges based on how big their video game files were. On the Nintendo Switch 2 though, Nintendo aren't doing this. Nintendo have only made 2 video game cartridges. Now, this is all rumour. It's not confirmed at the moment. We do need some specifics. Somebody does need to do a deep dive into this. Someone needs to interview Nintendo or get on one of those investor briefing Q&A sessions, and someone needs to ask this question. How many Switch 2 cartridge sizes do you have? So I heard it through the grapevine that basically there is a 64 gigabyte cartridge and then one that's like 7 gigabytes or something stupid like that. Now this seems to make a lot of sense to me why almost every single video game developer is putting their games on the Switch 2 on a game key card, whatever they're called. This makes sense. Nintendo have manufactured this horrible ecosystem and environment. It makes no sense to me why Nintendo have done this. Because a 64 gigabyte cartridge for the Switch costs something like $16 US. That's massive hit. That's taken a chunk out of the profits already. No video game publisher is going to put their games on a 64 gigabyte Switch 2 cartridge that costs $16. They're just gonna put them on the game key cards. Where are the other Switch 2 cartridge sizes? Why is it only 64 gigabyte and then something like 4 gigabytes or 7 gigabytes, whatever? Why have you not created options in the middle? Where is the 32 gigabyte cartridge? Why is there no happy medium? You need to give us multiple sizes, because I swear down, I'm not going through a whole generation buying digital games again. I just think Nintendo could have prevented all this. You didn't need to do game card keys. Well, you could have done them, but why have you made them so sexy and attractive to video game publishers? Stupid, Nintendo, stupid. Ugh! Why would a video game publisher not want to put their game on a game key card and save some money? Nintendo, you have created this. Nintendo are the devil. They are the Antichrist of video games. Literally, they are signalling the end times of the physical video game market as we know. And to be honest, once them servers go offline, I'm cooked. All my Switch games are donezo, they're done for. So I'm not very comfortable with this whole digital system. And then I started to remember, the Switch 2 only comes with 256 gigabytes of onboard memory.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
256 gigabytes worth of memory. It's looking really small now. It's looking really small. I've been looking at some video game sizes for the Switch 2, and there's a little infographic. Well, I'm going to put it here. I'll put the infographic here. But someone's made an infographic of all these Switch 2 launch games that will be coming out, and they've put their gigabyte sizes on. Now, if you have a look, Mario Kart is a whopping 23.4 gigabytes. Well, not a whopping, to be honest. But I've got 256 gigabytes on my Switch, 10 gigabytes for operating systems or whatever. So I've got 246 gigabytes. Well, Mario Kart has just taken off 24 gigabytes. I'm no good at maths, but I think I've got around about 200 gigabytes left. Breath of the Wild is another 24 gigabytes. Tears of the Kingdom is 19 gigabytes. How is that even possible? Tears of the Kingdom should be more gigabytes than Breath of the Wild. Anyway, if I buy Mario Kart, if I buy Tears of the Kingdom, and I definitely want Cyberpunk, oh, and Donkey Kong Bonanza, and Street Fighter, oh, I kind of want Mario Party as well. I'm definitely going to get Fast Fusion. Let's add up that gigabyte. Let's add up the gigabytes. Now, I'm not good at maths, so I need a pen. Right, so 2, 4, 9. So already I have used up 176 gigs on day one, on launch day. Well, to be honest, I'm not even going to buy all those games because I can't afford them. So then I realised that, Jonathan, you're going to have to get a micro SD card to fit all these games on your Switch too. But then I realised you can't use the micro SD card that I'm using on my Switch 1. Now Nintendo have introduced some brand new micro SD card that's super expensive. It says Nintendo Switch 2 uses a new standard of expandable storage called micro SD Express, allowing for faster data reading and writing speeds. Please note, Nintendo Switch 2 is only compatible with micro SD Express cards. But they're $49.99! It's $49.99 for 256 gigabyte micro SD Express card. How much is the terabyte one gonna be? Because that's ultimately what I'm gonna need, but how much is that? In fact, actually, did they exist on Amazon? Micro. How much is a terabyte? Well, £166! This is what I'm saying. Nintendo, what you are doing to my wallet is not okay. It's not. £166 on top of my $429.99. Nintendo, I'm not happy. Because on my Switch 1, I've gone digital. All my games are digital. It's one of my biggest regrets ever. I've never in any single video game generation gone digital, and I did it last one and I regret it. And to be honest, once them servers go offline, I'm cooked. All my Switch 1 games are donezo, they're done for, so I'm not very comfortable with this whole digital system. So I was going to go back to physical for my Switch 2, but that's not going to happen anymore now. It's not going to happen anymore. Like I said, I could understand the price of the console. I think it's decent value for money. I can understand the price of Mario Kart World, development costs are doubling, like bigger gameplay systems, mechanics, processing power, hardware, GPU and all that. But this is a no-go for me. This is a no-go.
Now you're playing with power. Superpower.
And that's all we have time for today. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you made it all the way to the end, I thank you so much. We will be back with another episode of NNN soon. Bye!